Good morning. It's September the 10th, and it is late in the season. You will recall by viewing my other videos that most of my trees have produced long ago. They continue to produce, but they were getting ripe. Their main crops were getting ripe starting with July 4th and mainly in July, but throughout August and until this time. But I wanted to point out a few things that might be of some value to you with regards to early varieties versus late varieties. This continues to pump out the figs. This is Black Greek Marius, and I should have taken this video maybe last night, but we had company and I ate about 6 or 7 ripe figs and shared them with my company. But this has been producing figs consistently for several weeks at least, and they're an exquisite fig. Black Greek Marius. It is a Mount Etna type, like Hardy Chicago, but sweeter. I think redder inside, and not quite as big, maybe, as your largest Hardy Chicago's, but it is certainly a very productive and prolific variety, and I think with a little extra bit of taste, and I prefer it to many of the others, along with Malta Black. This is going to be videos. I'm going to make videos about this later in the year, pretty soon actually. But these are my Nikita's Gift. It's a Russian cross between an American persimmons and a Japanese persimmons. There's only 2 that have ever been successful. This is one of them, and I highly recommend Nikita's Gift. The only other persimmons, and I've grown them for, I'll show you here. Here's a tree that's enormous. I mean, it's, I don't know, 25 feet tall. It's much larger than my house. And this has been here for a long time. I've got one in the back of the barn, which has been there for well over 20 years. And that's an American persimmons. And it's called Meter. But this one is called Seijo, which in Japanese means the best. It's a long history. It's the most beautiful history. And when I do a video on persimmons, I'm going to tell the history of this tree. It's a magnificent history. It is, in my opinion, the best. And there are experienced growers in California and in other parts of the country which will also state that of all the persimmons in the world, Seijo is the best. Of course, you know, we all have our individual preferences. I'm not going to get into that again, but you can see how productive it is. It's just loaded with beautiful fruit, the most exquisite fruit. And quite frankly, I'm going to be completely honest, and the reason why I'm putting this in this video is because I want to encourage fig enthusiasts to maybe try a persimmons, and try Seijo, because it is so exquisite, it is so delicious. It is perhaps, and I'll say it this way to avoid controversy, the best tasting fruit that I have ever in my entire life eaten. How's that for an endorsement? And I mean that sincerely, wholeheartedly. I want to encourage you to try to grow this particular variety. Don't mind my snakes. These are I should have talked about this before. I get going and I make these videos, and I'm trying to keep it short, but I leave these on my they look terrible right now, But you see, I have like a little heads on them. Okay, and the birds, honestly, I swear, you can try this. This is really true, and I meant to talk about this. I'm even going to put eyes on that so-called head, but I leave these out, and I don't need to, because I found when I do, and I put them out when it rains real heavily, so it doesn't overly saturate my fig trees. But I found that when I put these out, the birds are terrified. They must think it's some giant big snake. So then I put a head on them, and the birds avoid this place like the plague. It's just incredible. Between that and my wonderful owl, which by itself works quite incredibly. And I just love my bobbing-headed owl. Gosh, he's a good friend. He's been a great friend, and he's been a faithful employee. And for little pay, it's incredible. Well, I didn't want to really talk about these varieties. This is Mavrasica, which I have endorsed earlier. This is Malta Black, and they're still pumping out figs. They just don't ever stop. This has been beaten up by the storms, and this is a variety that I've recommended. It's long since produced all its fruit. Most of my trees have produced their fruit long ago. Most of my varieties, because I stress earliness, and I do everything I possibly can to produce early figs. You will look at my earlier videos if you want to look at a video. This is Ron de Bordeaux that I featured way back on July 10th, and it was loaded with fruit. And you can look up figs, facts, and fiction. If you look at my video, Figs, Facts, and Fiction, way back then on July 10th, that would be part 1. I featured this particular variety, RDB, and it was just loaded with large fruit. Take a look at that video. I think you'll be impressed with that video, because it stresses some of the points that I've been trying to make for you, for your benefit. Because without earliness, you have no success in the northeastern climate. It's extremely important. It's an extremely important factor. It's an extremely important characteristic of a successful fig. Now, this is an improved Celeste, and it's making its second round of production. I don't think I made any videos of this, but I took some photographs and posted them on some of the forums. But you can see this is improved Celeste, and for September the 10th, just look at the fruit. Improved Celeste, it just continues to pump out fruit. You must have, if you live in the Northeast, you must have improved Celeste, and of course Celeste, which it produces earlier, and it's done. It's largely done. There's still some there. There's some that will get ripe. You can see them. This is my Celeste tree, which is probably 9 feet tall, and it just pumps out every year. It pumps out fruit, and I've made other videos of Celeste, and you've seen them, and I recommend that you watch those videos, because it's certainly, I call it one of the princesses of figs, and it is indeed. And I'm talking about ordinary Celeste, which in and of itself is an incredibly fantastic, successful cultivar, which I highly recommend. And then, of course, you can get the LSU cultivars, which are basically made by crossing with Celeste. We've talked about all of this before. And one of the better ones of all of those, and there's LSU Purple, we've talked about that. There's Champagne, we've talked about that for if you want a hungry fig. And we've talked about Tiger, LSU Tiger, and of course improved Celeste. There's O'Rourke. I mean, the list goes on. And improved Celeste is certainly one of the ones that you want to get in your collection for your backyard, either in the ground or in containers. Now, this I featured in Figs, Facts, and Fiction number 2, which you might want to review, and it's pretty extensive video. And I do feature Peter's Honey, and at that time, way back then in July, it was look at that, a bird got in there, or some creature even with a net. But It was mostly Breba being featured at that time, and it was loaded with Breba. And I've eaten so many of these now. I really should have done other videos, but I did a video down in Chincoteague, Virginia, of Peter's honey, which you can watch also. So there's some, I like the fact that they keep pumping out figs, and it's September 10th, and they're going to continue until the frost. So it's always nice. Up against the house here, there's a little microclimate, and they'll be sheltered. If I get an early frost, I'll throw a tarp over them real quick, and I try to, keep figs flowing. But as I was trying to explain, many of my figs have already produced long, long ago. And then I make it so, I stagger things, I make it so that I'll have figs, throughout the year, all the way up until the frost. Now, here's another one that I endorsed, I don't know, 2 months ago, a month and a half ago. And this is Sultane. But I want to show you that the Sultane is still producing figs. Look at that. And beautiful figs. Look. And Sultane, these are a little smaller than some of the real large ones here's a bigger one. And here's some really nice Sultanes. Look at these. You might want to look at these. Look at that. Sultane. And I'll try to break this open for you. But you'll see it's beautiful. It's delicious. It's sweet. I'm going to gobble this one up right now. In all seriousness, this cultivar, which I have planted in the ground using my grow bag method, which I have shown you on other videos, back all the way in April. This has produced and produced and produced fruit all summer long, ever since it started in July. And it continues, as you see, it continues to pump out fruits. And I highly recommend Sultane, and it's delicious. So I'm making some recommendations here. Don't forget the Black Greek Marius. What a good fig it is. I've got so much to show you that over here I've got more figs, many varieties that most of them have already produced, actually long ago, and continue. This one we've talked about many times, but you need to look at this because I want you to have these kinds of figs in your yard or in containers. This is in the ground, fully in the ground from last year. And this is called Taramo Unknown, and I've featured this before. And it is a unique fig, and it is a delicious fig, and it just simply never stops producing fruit. So this is a fig that you can count on. Okay, this is my reoccurring theme that I keep drumming. I'm sorry, I keep, ad nauseum perhaps, I just keep emphasizing and stressing. This is a hardy Chicago type, Mount Etna type, which is all done. It produced, it was producing a month and a half ago. And these are this is Smith, and this is a Warwick, and this is another Mount Etna type, which is a very good type. This is a brown turkey type. It's an Italian brown turkey. And this is another variety. I don't know what it is. This is probably another Smith that I started. Yeah, another Smith. Look at a beautiful tree. And I'll be up potting that pretty soon. There's another Black Madeira over there. There's a Black Madeira, and there's Golden Riverside. There's a few beautiful. Here's another Ronde Bordeaux. Here's Chincoteague Celeste, which is a special strain of Celeste, which I highly recommend. And I'm distributing it. I've distributed it to a seller. I don't sell figs. This is a hobby to me, and I do it just to help people, to inform them, and to bring in new, and to encourage new participation in my favorite hobby. That's it. But he will make them available. I will ask him to make them available to the general public. And I have another great friend who is also a distributor of figs, and I've already given him a variety of Celeste, a special strain of Celeste from the island of Chincoteague, which is just superb. And I've asked him to distribute it. And later on, I'll release that information so that anybody that wants it. This is what some people call it Holier. By the way, I don't want to get into a real long video here. I've got to cut it short. But I want to stress something. This is an LSU variety that I just can't recommend it any stronger than I am right now. I don't know how else to do it. Okay, it's just so delicious. This is I've only tasted my first one. I've had this for 2 years, but last year was just I call them babies. It was just a little baby, and now it was in the ground. I put it in the ground early in the year, back in April, and it's growing quite nicely for just a little baby that it was. And it's produced some nice figs, and I've eaten those figs, and I'll tell you, my pant legs rolled all the way up to my knees. I'm serious. They are delicious, so I'm very excited about that. Okay, I still have, as you can see here, there are still, I've featured this before, yellow long neck, and look at it. It's still producing delicious, gigantic, huge, look at that. Ripe figs. It's September 10th. And remember, I told you in my video that it would continue to produce, up into the fall. Now, here's one of the things I want to point out today quickly. This is so important. It's really something that I'm hoping that you will remember, okay, from my videos. This is an extremely point. This is Ronde Bordeaux, and I've raved about Ronde Bordeaux because I think it's one of the most useful and practical fig varieties to grow in the Northeast. Okay, I think, because it is not late, I've reserved a place, within my figs and within my particular endorsements for a king and a queen. I've dubbed other figs in fun, but seriously too. I've dubbed them prince and princess and princesses. There's several. And we have them in other tapes, and we will talk about that in the future. We were going to talk about that subject over and over again, I think. Oh, wow. This is actually a ripe Ronde Bordeaux. But the point, this is the queen. I've established in another tape that I believe that Smith, perhaps, in the Northeast, because it is earlier than Italian 258 and earlier than also Black Madeira, just because of that, I have basically maybe endorsed Smith a little more. It's still a little vague because they're all great cultivars, and it's a matter of personal taste. But Smith is such a fine fig, and it's right up there. It's exquisite. It tastes so delicious. Maybe just a little tad not as good as Black Madeira and Italian 258. Maybe just a little tiny bit, but you better have some really good taste buds, really heightened and sophisticated taste buds to be able to determine that. And I'm not so sure about it myself. But the thing about Smith is it's earlier. It's a full 3 weeks to a month earlier. My Smith had been done for weeks. I'll show you my Smith in a little bit. But my Black Madeira, I shared one with my friend last night, and I still have Black Madeira getting ripe right now. You can see there's Black Madeira. I still have several getting ripe, and here's another one. Look at that, beautiful. This one's splitting a little bit, but they have a closed eye, and I have found that they are superior to many figs for that reason too. That is a wonderful quality in a fig. Don't ever forget that, because Black Madeira is extraordinary when it comes to a closed eye. Other people say they split and they've had some problems with it. I've never had problems with Black Madeira. Never. And there's a reason for it, and we'll talk about that some other time. But here is, getting back to this, I want to point something out. It's important. This is still producing. This is Ronde Bordeaux. As you can see, still producing. But look at this. It has matured a second crop. Take a look at this. Just take a look at that. A late crop. The main crop, which is blended, this crop blended into the main crop. Look, these are smaller, but these will get ripe. The main crop is huge, and I've showed in videos of that. But then it develops a late crop. And this is the third crop if you count the Breba. It's the third crop. And these will all get ripe. This is sitting out here in the yard. When if it gets a little cooler, I'll stick this in the greenhouse, but I won't really have to because it's going to continue to ripen figs for several weeks in September. And so it's not, even the third crop isn't late. I'm not too late. Think about that. When all of my other varieties have basically panned out already, Ronde Bordeaux is producing yet another crop. This is a magnificent cultivar. I mean, look at it. It's beautiful. And look how healthy and vibrant it is. And it's only in a 10-gallon pot. Okay, so, and I don't have anything bigger than a 10-gallon pot because I try to keep them compressed. I keep the roots compressed because I have better results. And I feed them very rich formulas of food. And they don't need a larger pot. Now, that might be a controversial statement, but guess what? What's so controversial about looking at these figs? You can see it with your own eyes that they don't need a bigger pot. Look at them. Look at my other videos. And so if I don't need a bigger crop pot, guess what? You don't either. You don't need a bigger pot. I mean, if you want to go to a 15-gallon pot, eventually, then do so. But that's not the key. That's not the answer to growing figs successfully in the Northeast. And I've talked about many of the principles that are the key to success in the Northeast. I've been doing this a very, very long time. And I'm trying to keep you and prevent you from going up the wrong road, with regards to growing figs in very large containers. Avoid doing it. It is not necessary, and it's counterproductive. Now, I'm going to very quickly just come into the greenhouse here, and this is my Smith. There are some figs that will get ripe, just a few left, but for the most part, it's done, and it's been done for weeks. Okay, so it is earlier. This is done also. This has been done for, oh gosh, a long time. This is one of my earliest producers, Canadria, Iracondit's Canadria. We talked about that. I featured that much earlier in the year, back in early June. Now here you have Genovese Nero or Italian 258, and you can see that many of the figs still haven't gotten right. But I've eaten many, many delicious figs with it. Well, let's go over here to another one. This is what? This is my Italian 258. Okay, the other one is Genovese Nero. And you will see ripe figs on this. They were both producing quite a bit of ripe figs. But this is Italian 258. Let me eat this fig, This RDB. Oh, God, what a job. Somebody has to do it. It's so early in the morning, but I'll do it. Oh, my God. God. They are good. Get a Ronde Bordeaux. Certainly have that in your collection. There's absolutely no doubt. Get Ronde Bordeaux and Smith in your collection. And I love, we talked about this. It's still loaded with fruit. Look at it. Battaglia Green. It is an Adriatic type fig. I've talked about it. We're talking about it again. We're going to go over all of the notes. I'm going to do a refresher video and go over all the principles. And then we're going to go into winter protection. And I'm going to hope to share lots of things that I've learned over the years with you so that you can be a better figster. Okay, that's the whole goal, to be better figsters. Okay, so that's what we can call ourselves, figsters. And let's be careful on the pronunciation of that, okay? All right, so here you will see that there's still plenty of ripe Battaglia Green. I mean, I could just keep picking them. They're all over the place. I've been eating them like candy. And let me break one open. Let's see. They're just so beautiful. The Adriatics have such a beautiful color. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful, gang? Gosh, it's so wonderful to be able to come out here and pick so many varieties of figs. And, again, my main crop started on July 4th, early. And I stressed early. Look at this one. Look how. Now, is there any doubt? Here, let me put this down here. Okay, let's pick this. Let's pick this Italian 258. Okay, together. I want to share another moment with you. I love sharing moments, and I love your visits. Thanks for visiting. I hope you found my videos informative. This one is Italian 258. Let me get out my trusty knife and try not to butcher this. Hold on just a second. I'll see if I can't cut this. There we go. Oh gosh. Wow, look at that. All right, here we go. There we go. This is Italian 258. Look how beautiful, even for September the 10th. What was it? I forgot now that when I mentioned it to you. The 8th or 10th. I think it's the 10th. Jeez, I can't believe it that it's getting so late in the season. But look at that. I mean, it's just exquisite, beautiful, delicious Italian 258. But what I'm trying to show you is the reason why I say that Italian 258 is another princess and not a king or a queen of figs is just because you have to keep in mind that it is a late variety. Now, I've been eating these for quite a while. You will note my videos. And I will continue to eat these, as you can see, which is a wonderful benefit. Because while a lot of other figs have stopped producing, these continue to produce. Like the other varieties I showed you today, like Ronde Bordeaux, which makes it magnificent. So it's back in July 4th was the first one, and that was a month earlier than this. So, I mean, in the Northeast, a month is just an incredible length of time. You know, that's why it gets a higher status. That's why it gets a higher grade, like Smith. But for exquisite taste, you know, it rivals any fig in the world, I would say. I haven't eaten every fig in the world, but maybe someday I will be lucky enough to, if I live long enough. Here's another variety. This is an Italian brown turkey. We call it brown Naples in the family. It's been in the family for over 50 years. I've talked about this, and they continue to get ripe. You can see it's got a drop of honey too coming from it. This is a fig, a little known fig that, I mean, not many growers have it or choose to have it or know about this particular strain. But let me tell you something. I don't have time to cut into it, but it's reddish inside, and it has a delicious taste, and I remember tasting them as a little boy. I will tell you a story, and not on this video. Should I do it? I don't think so. Gosh, maybe I will real quick. Jeez, I didn't mean to run this video. Remember, Genovese Nero, and there's some of the later figs that I have in my collection, but magnificent and certainly early enough to enjoy. I mean, look at them. I've been showing them on videos for quite some time, and I highly recommend Italian 258 along with Black Madeira. But remember, they're later than some of the other varieties that I recommend even more. But remember, it's a close call. It's a close call. I'll tell you one little story about this thing. Since I do have one here, let me just tell this story quick. It was my first story about getting introduced into becoming a fig fanatic. I was just a little boy, and I was with my grandfather, and he had fig trees, and he went over to another family, one of the nicest families I've ever encountered in my entire life, Italian family. And there were 4 brothers from Italy, and one of them was married, and it was his house that we went to. His name was Juan. Anybody listening, any of the family listening to this video will immediately know the family. I don't want to name the family. But my grandfather took me over there. We went over there regularly. I love my grandfather. He told me stories. I'm named after him. Stories and stories and stories. He was a great storyteller. And let me see if I can get this thing off. It's on there really good. There we go. Whew, gosh. A little drop of honey coming out. This was the variety. I preserved this variety in my family, and I'm so happy that I did. For many decades. Let me open it up. There we go. This had a different color to it. Then it's not quite as red as Black Madeira or Italian 258 or Smith. or even Ronde Bordeaux, or the other Bordeaux's, like Violette de Bordeaux and the other strains, which, oh, I want to show you that one too. Well, okay, let me finish the story. So he took me over there to that family of Italians, and they were the most generous, the nicest people that you could ever know in the world. They were just a great family. I used to love going over there, and they had a couple big fig trees, and these figs were getting ripe, and it was probably in the middle of the summer. And my grandfather, we were sitting outside on some chairs, and his friend said he always used to bring a couple shots of whiskey, strong whiskey, Secret Sevens, you know. And he said, I'm going to go in and get a shot of whiskey. And these guys talked very broken English. And he went in to get my grandfather a shot of whiskey. And my grandfather stood up quickly, and he saw the ripe figs. And the tree was pretty big, because there were some mild winters, I suppose, and it was pretty darn big. And there were some higher up, and he didn't have a ladder, because remember, he was over his friend's house. So he picked me up. I was just a little boy, and he put me up in the crotch of the tree. He says, get it out of fig for me. And there was a couple figs up there. So I was up there in the crotch of the tree, looking, you know, and he said, you know, pick, you know. And so I picked the fig, you know, and I looked at him, and he had done this a couple times before. And I said, man, you know, what is it with these figs with him? You know, they look kind of good. let me take a bite. So I actually took a bite of the fig, and he goes, no, eat, a throw. and I said, I just continued to eat that fig, and that was it. It was over after that. And I love the taste of that fig, and I still grow those figs. Here they are, you know, and I'm going to grow them until I die. And they're not quite as good as some of the others that we've been talking about, if I had to grade it, but it has sentimental value to me. And they are exquisite, and they are early, and they produce long in the season, as you can see. They produce early, and they're a wonderful tasting fig, overlooked, completely overlooked by so many growers. And it shouldn't be, because I'll tell you what, it just brings back memories for me. I'm just so thrilled to think back over the decades about that fig variety, and my grandfather and my uncles and my dad and people. It's all about that, folks. It's all about memories. You know, it's all about reliable fig varieties that can withstand the cold weather and are certainly worth growing. There's many varieties that aren't worth growing, and there's many varieties that are. And of course, your job is to find out which is what. Hey, look at that little creature right there. Look at that. You see him? He's well camouflaged.